welcome. And thank you for joining me before you drift off to sleep. Tonight's story is titled Cabin Light and is about a young man who learns that even the most seemingly generous of gifts can sometimes be a burden in disguise. But first, for the next few minutes, we're going to let go of the day, let go of any tension, and simply focus on finding peace and relaxation in this moment. If you haven't done so already, find a comfortable position, and we'll begin preparing your body for a comfortable rest. To begin, take a deep breath in through your nose, filling your lungs completely. Now, exhale slowly through your mouth, letting all the air drift out, taking any stress with it. Again, breathe in deeply. And exhale slowly. Now, if you haven't already done so, gently close your eyes and let your breath fall into a natural rhythm. Imagine each breath as a gentle wave rolling in and out effortlessly. And as you continue to breathe, focus on how your body feels in this moment. Let's begin by bringing awareness to your feet. Notice any tension there. And now, with each exhale, release that tension. Imagine your feet becoming heavy, sinking deeper into relaxation. Move your focus up to your legs, your knees, your thighs. Notice how they feel. Allow them to soften and relax. Imagine any heaviness draining away with each exhale. Now, turn your attention to your hips and your lower back. Often we carry tension here. Breathe deeply into this space, and with every exhale, let that tension melt away. Your hips, your back, completely at ease. Bring your focus to your stomach. Notice how it moves with your breath. Let each exhale soften your abdomen, releasing its tightness. Feel how your whole core relaxes, becoming light and free. Now, shift your attention to your chest, your shoulders. Feel the rise and fall of your breath here. And as you exhale, imagine your shoulders dropping, letting go of any weight they've been carrying. And with each breath, they become lighter and more relaxed. Now, move your focus down to your arms, to your hands and fingers. Let any tension here dissolve with your exhale. Your arms feel warm, loose, and completely relaxed. Finally, bring your attention to your neck and face. Relax your jaw and let your tongue rest gently in your mouth. Soften your brow. As you exhale, let your whole face release. Your neck and head become light, as if they are floating. Breathing in and breathing out. The story will begin shortly, but for the next few moments, simply sit with this stillness. There is nothing to do, nowhere to go, just you, your breath, and this calm feeling. You've taken this time to care for yourself, to find calm and stillness. Carry this peace with you as we continue on with the story. Cabin Light. After my grandfather died, I was surprised to learn that he had mentioned me specifically in his will. It was odd because we were never particularly close. I had only ever met him on a few occasions. My mother's relationship with her father was strained. I never got all of the details, but as I got older, I assumed there was some level of abuse that occurred. I was always too scared or shy or embarrassed to ask. The only thing my mother said is that he was always tinkering with cars and taking them apart. I never knew about the cabin that my late grandfather had bestowed upon me. Nonetheless, I was informed that I was now the sole owner of this property. I had never driven anywhere near as far north as this cabin, but being the owner of the house, I figured it was my duty to go and at least see the place. The drive took about 4 hours. I left the city limits and traveled over hills, along patches of farmland and sporadic subdivisions. Eventually, I was destined to turn on to a dirt road off of a highway, and by this time, it was getting dark. I drove for about 5 minutes on this road until I came to a lot marked 2937. Home sweet home. The driveway wasn't particularly long, but large cedar trees prevented the house from being seen from the road. As I turned onto the driveway, I noticed a light flickering through the trees. I was confused because I was under the impression that the utilities would still need to be turned on. I continued slowly down the driveway, and the light went behind a tree. It just didn't reemerge. By the time I reached the house, there was no indication of a light. Where had it gone? Confused but not concerned, I parked the car and began moving the limited amount of supplies I had brought to the porch. I did my best to put the occurrence of the light out of my mind, but was once again faced with the bizarreness of it all. The porch light did not have a bulb in the socket. Could it have been a car light off in the distance? There did not appear to be any neighbors nearby. I needed some light of my own, so I powered up my battery-powered lamp. By this point, my thoughts turned to trespassing. Maybe some local kids had heard the place was empty and decided to go investigate for a fun night. I found the front door locked, so I took the key I had obtained from the lawyer, inserted it into the lock, and turned. The lock unlatched, but the handle appeared stuck. After using the handle to pull the door toward me, I gave the handle a jerking twist, and the door almost popped open. I listened in the doorway before calling out to see if anyone else was there. No response. I turned my attention back to the porch, focused on bringing my belongings inside. I grabbed the lamp and put it on the nearby kitchen table. I retrieved the rest of my belongings and went to place them inside the doorway when I heard something patter across the floor. I raised my head, but my eyes had not adjusted to the light. Did I see something run into that doorway? Oh God, was the door still moving? And then a flash of light, and I froze. There was no sound, but I recognized the coolness of the light. It was the same type of light that I had seen earlier. Again, I called out in hopes of getting an answer. Nothing. Maybe it was just a small animal, a rat or some other kind of rodent, but that sounded like a big rodent. Picking up my lantern, I headed slowly toward the door. My footsteps creaked on the slightly uneven floor panels as I approached the door, which remained ajar. I called out one more time. Nothing. I took a deep breath, placed my hand in front of me on the door, and pushed forward. I shone the light in the room and saw a bed and a dresser. This was a bedroom. I slowly walked around the bed, shining my lantern into the corners of the room. It was empty. I must have just imagined it. Unless it had wandered under the bed. A dusty rose-colored bed skirt fell from the box spring all the way to the floor. It piled slightly at the bottom. Perfect. Given this was likely where I'd be spending the night, I wanted to make sure it was safe. I had to check under the bed. Feeling a little bit more bold, it didn't take me long to work up the courage to kneel down and reach for the bed skirt. My hand snapped back when I heard it tapping on the window. It was just branches. Perhaps I hadn't worked up as much courage as I had thought. Frustrated with myself, I grabbed the bed skirt and flung it up so it stuck to the bed. I pushed the lantern underneath as far as I could. Again, nothing. I pulled the lantern back and was starting to get to my feet when I saw the flash of light again. It was coming from beneath the bed. I thought it was odd. There wouldn't be a basement in a cabin like this. Perhaps just a small crawl space. I waited for a couple of minutes, but all I heard were the taps of the branches. There was no sign of the light, and I was starting to get hungry. I grabbed my lantern, shook off the uneasy feeling, and headed for the kitchen. I had packed myself a couple of sandwiches, knowing there wouldn't be many restaurants or grocery stores around. I eventually found them, unwrapped one, and began eating it when I decided I should have a look at the rest of the cabin. I walked carefully towards a sitting area. The cabin was an older style cabin, very old furniture and worn cabinetry. In the sitting area was an old couch and chair set, both with tattered rips and tufted foam. Beside them, another door leading to the backyard area. Even though it was quite a warm day, the evening air was starting to cool, and the large windows at the back of the cabin did little to keep it out. Moving slightly beyond the sitting area was a bathroom. Nothing special. Again, the fixtures and details were all a bit past their prime. Just a small room. Was that it? The cabin had seemed a bit larger than this from the outside. That couldn't be all of the rooms. After I finished eating, I decided to take a quick walk around the outside of the cabin to see if I had been mistaken. It was now getting noticeably dark and had even started to rain, so my plan was to stick as close to the cabin as possible. I'd just go for a quick look. I headed to the front door and with some effort was able to get it open. Leaving it open, I ventured outside with my lantern still in hand. The entire cabin was surrounded by about a 2-foot path of gravel that had been taken over by weeds some time ago. Over the years, the gravel had sunken so far into the earth that it barely moved when stepped on. I walked to my right, going along the kitchen wall towards the back of the structure. The kitchen windows wrapped around the first corner, leading to more windows along the side of the house. I kept going. Turning the corner again, I could see the large sitting room windows and back door. Everything looked normal. I kept walking. Turning the corner again, I passed what I believed to be the bathroom window, and then a large stretch of wall. I was right. There was too much space here for just one bedroom. I kept moving and turned the corner again, first finding the bedroom window. I peered from the outside and saw the dresser along the wall that, by my estimation, shouldn't be that close. Before I could move toward the front door to go back in, it slammed shut. I walked over a few paces and tried the front door with my free hand. The damn thing was sticking again. While I fumbled with the doorknob, I accidentally dropped my lantern, breaking it. Everything seemed to go pitch black in an instant. The darkness of the night suddenly hit me, and the sounds of the night seemed to get noticeably louder as well. I turned my attention back to the door, applying the same technique I had used originally. Success. I was inside. I closed the door, but the victory was short-lived. I was in the dark. The flashlight. I knew I had brought a backup with my stuff, and it shouldn't have been too far away from where I was standing, so I started fumbling in the dark. Walking around the table, I walked into one of the older chairs surrounding it. I eventually felt the familiar strap of my bag, pulled it closer, and searched for the zipper. Before I could find it, there was a bright flash behind me, and my silhouette appeared boldly on the wall ahead of me. I swung around, but the light was gone. Starting to panic, I fumbled harder for the zipper to my bag. After searching for what seemed like forever, I finally grabbed and tugged it open in a hurry. The zipper snapped. I began pulling at the sides in an effort to get it open. My persistence paid off, and I was able to open the bag far enough to put my hand in. I began searching through a set of clothes and a toiletry bag. I searched far into the corner of the bag and eventually felt the cool metal of the flashlight. I quickly pulled it out of the bag, turned it on, and swiveled around. Though I knew I would get no response, I called out anyway. I was a little freaked out, but I still wanted to figure out what was going on with the missing space within the cabin. I decided to venture into the bedroom to investigate further. Pushing the door open, I realized that the door didn't actually open all of the way. When opened, it butted up against the dresser, which I was now starting to realize was placed quite awkwardly. Noticeable marks of wear and tear were on the door and the dresser where the two met. Not only was the dresser placed in an odd way, it had been there for a long time. Pointing my flashlight at the floor, I could see deep scratches in the hardwood. Someone had been moving the dresser, but they had always moved it back. I became curious. I placed the flashlight on the bed facing the dresser. The dresser was old and solid wood. It took me a while to find the best place to push or pull it out of the way. With a few good heaves, I had moved it far enough from the wall to get a look. After grabbing the flashlight, I shone it on the newly exposed wall. It was somewhat hard to make out, but a part of the wall looked different than the rest. and there was a small hole on this section as well. I placed 2 fingers inside and pulled the section toward me. It swung open almost effortlessly. Shining my flashlight in the hole, I could not see much. It looked like a whole different room. I was right. I ducked down and, head first, started making my way into the newly found space. It was less kept up than the rest of the house. I brushed along several spider webs while squeezing into the space and standing up. It was a small room, only about 5 by 10. As I looked around, I only saw 3 things in the room. An old-fashioned desk, quite narrow but tall. On top, I noticed a book. And right above the desk, mounted on the wall, was a wooden cabinet. There were no windows in this room, but I could feel the storm starting to pick up. I could hear the rain on the roof increase in frequency, and the taps of the branches from the next room were becoming more violent and frequent. Moving slowly toward the desk, I began to get weirded out. This did not feel right. I have to assume it was my imagination, but the air became thicker as I approached the curious items. Using one hand, I slowly pushed open the cover of this book. On the first page it read, "To whom it may concern." I turned over the first page and began to read the contents. It was a numbered list with 2 columns for each number. In the first column was a description of a vehicle, make and year. The second column listed a color. At that moment, I heard a large noise to the right of me on the wall, attached to the bedroom. I swung my flashlight toward the noise and saw something I had missed that was taped to the wall. It was a newspaper clipping. The title read, "John Abbott found not guilty in murder trial." I continued reading. John Abbott will walk free after a jury found him not guilty in the death of Amanda Knollworth. A jury found the prosecution had not amassed the amount of necessary evidence to convict Abbott. Miss Knollworth's car was found on Abbott's property after a tip from a local man who recognized the vehicle. Mr. Abbott has attested that he purchased the vehicle from Miss Knollworth after she found herself with a broken-down car as well. He paid her cash for the vehicle, and last he knew, she was hiking out to the road to look for a ride. Abbott says he offered Knollworth some assistance, but she declined. I didn't read any more of the article. My gaze returned to the odd book and the list of vehicles. Oh God, the list of colors in the book. How did I not notice? They were colors of hair. And first on the list, 1990 Ford Taurus, blonde. Another slam on the wall holding the cabinet forced the cabinet door open, and a pair of keys fell out of the cabinet onto the book in front of me. I looked into the cabinet. It was filled with hooks, and each had a number, all the way up to 24. But only 5 sets of keys hung on the hooks. Number 1 had fallen onto the book. I picked up the set of keys and examined the keychain, and on it was a small flashlight that was activated by pressing on it. In that moment, I knew this was the light I had been seeing. It wanted me to find this. Just then, the storm began to rage, and the entire cabin seemed to be shaking. I quickly grabbed the book and the newspaper clipping, ripping it in the process. I squirreled out of the hole, out of the bedroom, and into the kitchen. I grabbed my stuff and went for the door, almost losing my balance from the growing rumble in the house. This time, I had no problem opening the door. I had pulled on it as hard as I could. I started racing for my car and made it inside. I was just catching my breath when there was a large crack of thunder and a bright light behind me. I did not look to see where it was coming from. I started my engine and took off as fast as I could, heading home. A couple of days later, after I had time to calm down and process everything, I got in contact with the local police and told them about what I had found, but not what I had witnessed. They agreed to meet me at the property, so the following weekend, I made the long journey back. When I got to the house, the police were already waiting. The cabin seemed so much more peaceful in the daylight. We stepped inside and the place was much more displaced than I remember. The kitchen chairs and table were thrown about the room. I walked the officer to the bedroom and showed him where I had retrieved the items. As he was examining the room, his partner asked us back to the kitchen. As soon as I got to the kitchen, I was asked to wait outside. The officer had opened the crawlspace entrance and immediately saw evidence of human remains. It would be months before we had an answer, but police exhumed 5 bodies from beneath the cabin. All 5 could be matched to missing persons cases of people last seen leaving in their vehicles, and all 5 missing vehicles were listed in my grandfather's book. Amanda Knollworth's body was never found. She can keep the cabin. That was Cabin Light. I hope this story has given you the time you need to drift off into a peaceful sleep. I look forward to spending time with you in the future. Thank you.